Washington's fifth spring practice was full of feast or famine.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. I'm the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. And Lars, we had a lot of fun on Thursday at Washington's fifth spring practice. And as I said in the opener, it was full of feast or famine because you had a little interception counter going and you counted 7, correct me if I'm wrong, interceptions on the day, and 6, sorry. And there were also we kept getting it wrong, and then eventually it did turn out to be 6. But there were also a whole bunch of touchdowns. Not only did Washington work on a lot of red zone stuff, which obviously will lead to a little bit of a higher output for the offense, as it's a little more geared towards their success, but we saw some massive plays from not just Denzel Boston, who we're going to get into because he had another fantastic day, but Jeremiah Hunter as well. And oh boy, shout out to our good buddy Evan Feather, as we're all standing over there on the sidelines. And he said the drop off from last year to this year really isn't going to be as significant as people think. And we were like, yeah, that's what we've been saying, man. Like, we're all kind of in consensus that, yeah, it's not going to be Rome and Jalen, but Jeremiah Hunter and Denzel Boston are going to do some things in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, no, I think that's the key, right? Because 1 or 2 of those guys is going to pop, right? But if both pop, that's the key for Washington, right? That's where you go from 5-6 wins to 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 with a bowl win, right? 10 maxes out this team, like 10 without question. Max, but at the same point, when we look at the talent, again, Jeremiah Hunter sometimes with the 2s and 1s, but again, even no matter who's throwing him the ball, I think he's making plays. And same with Denzel, where it's like it truly honestly doesn't matter if it's Will Rogers or Damon Williams. Again, we saw Will Rogers throw one more pick than Damon, and they're obviously both different quarterbacks in terms of what they like to do. But I think to our point about the receivers just get the ball in their hands. That's why Will Rogers, I think, at least will start kind of initially, just because it's like.
I'm sorry. I have one thing to say. No, you don't need to get it into their hands. As Jeremiah Hunter showed on numerous occasions, you just needed to get it in their general vicinity, and they're going to find a way to make a play. So, like, I'll just let you start because I'll let you finish your point, because then there's so many fantastic plays that we need to get to that both of those guys made today.
Right. And then the other thing too, they're going against really good talent, right? I mean, we'll just kind of lead right into it, right? Where Denzel Moss is Ephesians price tag. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Not like there's not even a joke about that. And it was you could argue it was in double coverage, whether or not it was in double or single or with help over the top. Denzel was catching that ball. And the way he went up reminded me a lot of Rome, where it's like, I'm going to go and take this ball away. Yep. And when I say Rome, 2023 Rome, not 22 Rome, that kind of still needed to add some muscle, which I'm sure probably Denzel would agree that he could use a little bit more muscle. But that I'm talking like 3 to 5 pounds. He doesn't need to go 5-10 pounds. Like, he doesn't need to slow himself down, because the way it's almost his football IQ makes up for any potential size or muscle mismatch, right? Where again, and going against the Ephesians price dog, dude ain't no slouch. So it's to me, and Jeremiah Hunter going and pick whoever you want. It wasn't just Thaddeus Dixon. It was, you had Elijah, you had EP out there. He had
Leroy Bryant a couple of times as well. He did it. He did it on everybody. And so there's one more Denzel play that I want to get into before we get into a little bit of Jeremiah Hunter as well, where we talk about everything that he's done, where he's going up over people, making plays, outrunning guys. But he put the moves on Jordan Shaw as well, where he had just a little stop juke on the sideline, and Jordan Shaw almost went careening into us because he got him so bad. And Jordan Shaw has been really, really impressive. I know he's somebody we're going to get to as well, but Denzel Boston has just been that good. And, I'm sure we're going to get these comments of, oh, well, you guys are like, you're getting a little bit too high. No, it's every single day. This dude is making play after play after play. And I know something you and I talked about while we're standing there on the sidelines is it reminds me, and I'm not comparing him to Rome because you can't compare anybody to Rome right now, but it reminds us of what we saw from Rome last spring, where it was whoever was across from him. We just kind of look. I remember you and I were looking at each other as, oh, we feel bad for that guy. And it wasn't just like, oh, that guy's not good. It's no, Rome is just going to go win the ball. And that's how it's felt watching Denzel. I don't care if it's Prysock. I really don't care whoever it's been across from him. It's Denzel's going to win the ball. Like that's just how it's been. That's how it felt every single time. But Jeremiah Hunter has played. He played like that today. Like there was one play in particular, Lars. I know you'll know what I'm talking about, where it's a back shoulder fade towards the sideline and falling to the ground. He's trying to pull it in with one hand. And I started to react because I just expected him to pull it in at that point. And I can't remember who the corner was. Did a fantastic job just making sure that right as he was coming to the ground, he got a hand on the ball and was able to knock it out. But every single other play outside of that one, and it's kind of, what led to me reacting the way that I did, was every single other play we saw him make that day, or today, excuse me, as we record this on Thursday night, every single other play that we saw him make, it was, oh yeah, like it felt like he was going to come down with the ball. And I was talking with one of the off-field staff members of UW when we were talking about Jeremiah Hunter, and he said to me, I'm just thinking about what Jeremiah Hunter could have done these last couple of years if he had like real quarterback play. And then we just kind of looked at each other and yeah, we're going to get to see it. And that was before practice started. And then of course practice went the way that it did. And he's really coming along nicely. And he's been with the twos, as he still goes through install as he's a later enrollee, but he's not going to be with them much longer. And he's just going to continue cooking as he did with DeMond Williams for the majority of the day.
Right. Well, and we've touched on it a little bit. I almost think having Jeremiah at the 2 is the luxury and the experience that you have, because the one receivers have been Giles Jackson, Rashid Williams, and Denzel Boston. So when you put it the 2s, okay, Jeremiah, he's really more helping DeMond than he is actually a 2. And I think we've been pretty clear about that, to where no question Jeremiah is a 1. But with that being said, who is DeMond going to throw to? No offense to the walk-ons, but it's like, in order to truly see how good DeMond can be, and we saw that today, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into later on in the show.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't matter who is throwing them the ball, and it doesn't matter who's covering them. I mean, go back I think it was last Tuesday or Thursday, where Jeremiah Hunter had what would have been a touchdown in the end zone against Elijah Jackson, but Elijah had to hold on for dear life. And that's what he's going to do in the Big Ten, where it's like, hey, he's either going to force defenders to have a holding penalty, a DPI, or you're going to get owned. Like, there's no in between. It's not, and again, it's not just the fade route. It's not just using his 6'5" frame in the end zone and he can't do anything over the middle.
No,
you would
makes plays. Yeah.
You and Alex have documented well. It's like, hey, no, these are a lot over the middle routes. These aren't just fade routes. These aren't just, go routes, right? Where again, you could use his 6'5" frame.
He ran through somebody today too.
Exactly. And I will say, I do believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 90% positive the cornerback that you were mentioning was one of the Bryant. I could be wrong on that, but I remember it was a relatively tall corner, and which again, either is Thaddeus, Elijah, and it wasn't EP, obviously. So, and again, Leroy got burned on a couple of times, but then came right back and made some plays. So it's a good sign. Again, I know you got a little flack for this on one of the shows, after one of the shows, saying this is a really balanced team. That's what we're seeing. That's truly, again, take out the offensive line, take out the defensive line. I want to get into that a little bit later in the show, talking about how we can actually straight up just take out those 2 lines right now and just play 7-on. Because right now, this team in 7-on is extremely balanced. Now, I know football is still 11-on, but they don't have the bodies on the offensive line 1 to 5 right now. That we've documented that. We're not getting into that, but that's why when in fall camp this time comes around, the install is there. DeMond and Will Rogers, probably kind of your 1A, 1B at this. Will Rogers, your 1A, 1B. There we go. But either way, those guys are both going to be competing, and it's because of the reps like this, where they're the days like this, where they're just trading blows. And I think the other thing is none of them are afraid. None of the receivers are afraid to go up and get tagged, which we've seen both Denzel, Giles made some plays today, and he got tagged. There's a few guys who've gotten
Keith
tagged.
Reynolds made one too, yeah.
Exactly. And so you have the fearlessness in your receivers and the fearlessness in your quarterbacks to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to trust you to go do this. If I'm Will Rogers, I just need to get the ball, to your point, in about a 5 yard vicinity. I just need to get a box about 3 to 5 yards, and somebody will figure it out.
Lars, with that being said, you alluded to it. Let's get into the defense. right after a message from our good friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So, Lars, you alluded to 6 interceptions, and I'm not sure where we should start with this one, because like we said in the opener, that it was really like a feast or famine day. And I honestly think the best place to start is he didn't have multiple interceptions, but one that, as you grab the notebook, perfect. This is great. I want to start with Peyton Waters' pick, where you and I are standing right behind Giles Jackson as during Lebanon's, it was just fantastic. And he's yelling at Denzel Boston, "Denzel, it's coming at you." And I think Peyton Waters heard that, because he was right. It looked like it was just the in-breaking route over the middle of the field. And Peyton Waters certainly heard it, because he stepped in front and made a fantastic play and was able to get the pick on Will Rogers, his first of spring ball. And, you know, as great as just the whole sequence of events was, it was really a testament to Peyton Waters, who identified the play. Certainly heard what Giles Jackson said, but identified the play, made an awesome play to just an early break on the ball, jumped in front of the route and made the pick. And that's exactly what he should be doing. And as an early enrollee, as a true freshman, that's exactly what you want to see, where he got a couple of reps at the ones today. And I just really like what I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost a perfect kind of first interception, right? Where we've seen Peyton, and not even just today, we've seen Peyton kind of a number of practices now. Again, there's only been 5, so call it what you will. But we've seen him a number of times with the 1s and 2s, even, right? 2s obviously kind of given a little bit, but he has spent some time with the 1s next to Cam Fab. Usually is kind of who he tends to play with next to with the 1s. But he's got those ball skills, and we talked about that after he signed, where it's like, hey, like this guy, like with the right coaching, he could actually be something. And so, yeah, to see that come to fruition early. And again, to your point, where somebody asked me on Twitter, hey, what, were these kind of tipped? Were they kind of gimmies?
There was like 5 out of 6.
I was gonna say 5 out of 6 were notched. One was kind of like, okay. And honestly, maybe with or without the tip, it gets picked anyways. But either way, like, it's seeing, and it's not, again, the thing that impressed me most about today, and again, shout out to Peyton Waters, but it was 3 players, right? 4. Peyton was the 4th, or because there were 6 total, right?
Peyton's was 3rd.
So let's break it down. Thaddeus Dixon had 2.
Yep.
Devon Banks had 2, right? Because right as I tweeted, he had 5. Boom, comes right back and gets a 6. Peyton Waters had 1, and I am missing.
Cameron Fabiculano had 1.
Thank you. I knew there was 1 that we were missing on some level, but it's not just gimme plays. It's not just the walk-on quarterback getting picked left and right and everybody eating and making it look like making
strong plays on the ball.
And that's the thing, is it's all in 11, all right? So we don't, just for people out there, we don't count. We note it. We'll write it down in the book. I know Roman and I both kind of, if it's a 7-on pick or whatever, hey, that's a decent touchdown. We'll call it a touchdown. But in 11-on, when it actually counts, that to me is where I think everything that we've seen in kind of those mini 7-on drills, and I mean, they've been working a lot with the red zone. And then we saw that pay off today, where some of those drives, now again, they didn't finish them, but it's almost like, okay, you know what? This isn't going to be the 23 of Washington offense. People just got to accept that. It's never going to be like that. But this team, when they get ahead of momentum going, can strike at will. And I think that's been kind of, no pun intended there, for Will Rogers. But that's somebody, because again, Will did make some mistakes today. But again, the one thing that I have noticed, and this is going to pair in together with the defense, it's he cares so much. I mean, I told you the expletive that he let out after he had 1 bad pass, and it's like, these guys care. These guys want to go compete against the best, and we're seeing the best come out of him, and we're only a third of the way through spring. So imagine what we see in the back half of spring, after these guys have kind of picked up the playbook more. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see what the third quarterback does, because we only saw really 2 today. So with that being said, the defense, I mean, Jordan Shaw, I love Devon Banks, but here's the thing. Both of those guys having an impact today kind of lets me say, hey, you know what? Who cares who starts? You guys figure that one out for yourselves.
So I don't know if you're reading my mind or not, because I wanted to talk about Devon Banks, and I wanted to say we were arguing about this again on the sidelines of which one of those two should start. And I think Devon Banks made a really strong case because he had 2 picks, one with the third team, one with the first team. And it's just exactly what my point about Devon has been, where he's so strong off the ball. He can do so many different things that John Richardson is going to ask him to do. And I think the second pick, where he just kind of stepped in front and made a really, really strong play to attack the football, and just, I don't want to say he ran the route for the receiver, but he was just able to do everything that it was that he showed through the first 2 games of the season before he got hurt, where he's just going to be aggressive, and he hasn't been aggressive in a way where, like, we've seen Thaddeus Dixon flagged a couple of times. I want to get into his pick as well, because he made a fantastic play on that one. But where we've seen Thaddeus Dixon flagged a couple of times in one-on-ones, there was one that came down right in front of us where he got called for a holding right on the collar, and he was kind of like, well, and there was one of the coaches who was like, well, where was it? And I heard the ref yell at the coach. He had him the whole way by the collar. And it was pretty apparent where that's not what Devon has done, where Devon does a really, really good job with his hands, where he's not getting called for things. And I really like the way that he plays. And I think that it's going to translate really, really well if he ends up in the nickel, where, we've talked about Ephesians Prysock and Elijah Jackson starting on the outside. I think Jordan Shaw is a fantastic player. I think he's going to have an awesome career. But I just think that Devon Banks, if he shows up and shows the way that he played last fall, that I think right now he has a higher ceiling. I think Jordan Shaw might end up being just as good as Devon Banks in the long term. But I think right now, Devon Banks is the better option.
And I think, and you mentioned that he's had years of experience. I think part of that also, as long as he, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, right, with him, where it's, if he can stay healthy through spring and healthy through fall camp and go into the season again. And again, I know the injuries have come in season for him, but if he can just kind of maintain that through this into September, then I think there will be more confidence to say, okay, yeah, because again, we know how talented he is. It's not, I'm not against Devon Banks. Yeah, I was gonna, because again, I wanted to go somewhere else with that, but not about Devon. I was gonna go a different player, but I'm not against Devon, but at the same point, it's like, just because of that injury. But again, it's the perfect problem to have, right? Where 2 guys are competing. It almost, to me, it's just a matter of, it starts almost become a technicality, right? Where, especially in those first 3 games, right? Eastern Michigan, Weber State, and Washington State, right? Where, okay, the first 2, you're probably certainly going to see a lot more of Jordan Shaw than maybe against Washington State, just because, again, once you start getting into that Big Ten schedule, Devon might be taking more of those reps and Shaw getting, let's say, 10 to 20 snaps a game, and Devon getting 30 plus.
So this is another where I agree that it could certainly work out that way. And another reason that I say that I would put Devon Banks ahead is Jordan Shaw has 4 years of eligibility remaining, where he redshirted last year at Indiana. So the staff, while it's very clear, we know this, that they don't mind playing young guys, Devon Banks doesn't have that luxury, where I think that they understand, obviously we can still rotate both guys, as you just said, but if they look at the 2 and just say, okay, Devon Banks is closer to being out of eligibility and he's experienced, he has a little bit more under his belt, why not give him the opportunity to see what he can do? Because we know he can make plays when he's on the field. Just like, as I noted, I want to talk about Thaddeus Dixon, where he's a little bit boom or bust sometimes, where he's gotten called for a couple of penalties. We saw that with the pick that he had last year against Cal as well, where he got called for a face mask. But we saw him today just show why, and it's something that, I talked about all fall last year, where why I'm so high on him is because he can go up and make some really athletic plays. And I really like what he can do when he's able to keep his hands clean. And one thing that UW likes to do on some of their team drills is they get down to the 5-yard lines and they'll throw a fade ball to one corner of the end zone. Usually it's Denzel Boston against Ephesians Prysock, but this time they tried Rasheed Williams against Thaddeus Dixon, and Thad just went up and was able to high point the football and made a fantastic play. And if he can do more of that, I just really like what he can be moving forward.
Right, and I think all the tools are there for that. I think it's also the way he plays so physical. It's like you'd rather have him play more physical than so soft, right? Like if you're a DB coach and you're John Richardson, I don't like the penalties, but give me the penalties in that effort. Just maybe be a little smarter about it versus like, come on, like I need you to get with him, man. It's like you don't have to get Thaddeus to get with it. You just got to make him like stay between the lines more than anything else.
Exactly. As long as you clean up the technique, everything else can figure itself out. And Lars, that being said, let's get into some other stands that we had because there's one receiver that I really want to mention because he made a big play today. Actually, two receivers. Right after a message from our good friends over at Gametime, because with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, which is just such fantastic news for both of us, because I know, Lars, both you and I are huge baseball fans. We're going to spend a lot of time at the ballpark this summer, and just, the lower deals are, the better. And, one of the best things about it is the last minute deals because you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more on the Gametime app. You can, use things like zone deals where you save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. And Gametime's ticket coverage is awesome. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So, Lars, two receivers that I want to shout out for very different reasons. They both scored a touchdown. And let's start with Ojik Harris, where one of the things that I noted to you on the sidelines, and you brought it up, and I wanted to save it to come back around to it in this segment, was Ojik Harris scored a touchdown during the red zone portion on the exact same play that Arizona used to cut the score to 31-24 in the game against Washington this year, which was a little rub route and a fade, and they throw the fade to Ojik Harris in the back corner of the end zone, and his speed, which is exactly one of the reasons that I'm so high on him, I know our good buddy Ben Glassmeyer is as well, is because he can utilize his speed, much like Jake McCowling did on that play when he scored the touchdown, to just get open really quick where, even if there's a half second of contact and the DB his timing is thrown off like that, Ojik Harris is able to run by him and just get into the back corner of the end zone and be there fast enough to score a touchdown. And that was really exciting to see because just identifying that play and seeing what it was right off the bat is really cool, really fun to see. And it's nice to see that things like that are still in the playbook. But on top of that, it's just the Ojik Harris effect, I think, is going to be really, really fun, where you and I have talked about him a little bit, but then moving forward, we're 2-3 years down the line, that kid's going to be really fun to watch, where he's probably going to be a true slot player, but his speed is just electric.
Yeah, I mean, I would implore not to do a shameless plug here, but go check out my clip from Ojik Harris in the video portion of practice where he was making a break on a sideline ball, and you can just see the closing speed. Like, what would effectively be the closing speed for a defensive back, which is the separation speed for a wide receiver, where he gets out of first gear. It almost like he starts in second gear and then gets into slips third and gets into fourth gear right away. There is no third gear with him, and there's really also no first gear. Like, he doesn't power down that much. He kind of just idles at 2 and then can go up to fourth or fifth gear. And I think having that awareness, not only just having that speed, but then he's also got the football IQ to be aware of knowing how to get your foot down, possess the weight. Because there's one thing to be a track star, right? There's one thing to be, track on grass, right? Where it's your, basketball on grass, for whoever said that dumb thing back in the day. But
Booker McFarland's.
I gotta, yeah. Anyways,
we're not going down that road. We're not going down that road.
No, but it's one of those where having the awareness that he does, and just knowing that he can track the ball, and because again. And as a freshman too, right? Because again, if Denzel Boston does it, if Giles does it, if Jeremiah Hunter does it, no offense to those guys, but we almost kind of expect that from them. That's what they should be doing. Ojik as a true freshman, we obviously like the speed, but it's having that kind of rounding into a total package where, again, to your point, he's absolutely going to be in the slot, but tell me you're more than just what John Ross was, where you're 80 yards down the field and then you got to wait for a hot second for the ball to land. It's like, no, he knows how to run routes. He knows how to get that separation, which I think is why he's going to find the field, again, probably for 4 games. I don't think it'll be that much. But again, getting a taste of college football with that speed, there's something there. And certainly by next year in 2025 and 26, he should be cooking full go with, well, let's be fair, probably Damon Williams.
Absolutely. So we'll get to Damon in a second because I wanted to make sure we talked about him. But I wanted to give a quick 30-second shout out to Jason Robinson, where he made a fantastic play on a screenplay that he took about, I'd say, 60 yards for a touchdown, where it's one of those ones where, once he gets past the last line of defenders, you can kind of walk all the way into the end zone. But he had to do a lot of work to get there. And he did a fantastic job because it's just one of those, one of the tunnel screens that Ryan Grubb liked to run, where it's not the same with all the offensive linemen coming out, but it was certainly a bigger screenplay with 4 or 5 guys out in front of him. And he had to make a couple of really nice cuts to get to the inside and then turned up the field. And he can go as well. It's not Audric Harris level speed, but he has some really nice speed and he's starting to put on some weight, which is good. That's the one thing that you and I have harped on with him that he needs to continue to do. But it was just a really promising sign for somebody who is really promising just with the advanced route running ability that he's displayed throughout his high school career. And Lars, with that being said, just somebody else who's displayed advanced ability throughout his high school career, it's Damon Williams, because he threw a couple of picks today, but he was still very, very impressive.
Right. And I think the one thing that stood out with Damon that I'm glad we get to talk about in this third segment is he's not afraid, right? I hinted at it in the first couple of segments, but he really has no problem throwing into, I'm not saying double coverage or bad decisions, but I think the one thing also to note about Damon, he's got the deep ball touch. I would love it if he could find the RPM meter on his intermediate routes, because he almost I think it was Jeremiah Arno was one, but there was a couple of receivers that were like, oh, I didn't expect the ball to come that quickly. And so
right,
if he can find a way to dial that back and kind of find the velocity meter, if you will, because again, he's got all the tools there to make it work. And I think him not being afraid, that's what's separating. And I'm not saying DeMarcius is afraid, but just when you look at DeMarcius reminds me a lot of Austin Mack and his decision-making last spring, where it's, hey, you can see the physical tools. Again, I'm not saying Austin Mack and DeMarcius are one and the same, but Austin held the ball a lot. And DeMarcius is kind of like, hey, let me kind of go, and again, it's not the worst thing in the world, but when you see Damon play at 80 miles an hour and DeMarcius probably at like 50 miles an hour, you can kind of see why there's that little bit of gap between the two.
Right.
And then Damon just letting that thing rip. He short, intermediate, sideline. Is there a throw, at least on this point on the field, that he can't at least attempt? I'm not saying has locked down, but is not afraid to make, or is afraid to make. Like, there's not a throw that he's afraid to make, in my opinion.
So when you started that, I just decided to wait. Where that's what I wanted to say. He's not afraid to attack anywhere on the field. He likes throwing to all 3 levels of the field. I think he needs to go through his progressions at a little bit of a faster pace sometimes as well, kind of similarly to DeMarcius and to what we saw from Austin Mack. But that's okay. Right. And it's just like it is for DeMarcius and just like it was for Austin Mack, because these are 17, 18-year-old kids who are playing in a much more advanced offense for the first time. And that's just part of learning football, where DeMarcius for Damon being a 4-year starter like he was in high school, he's a little bit more ahead. And I think that's what gives him a little bit of a leg up in that sense, where he still needs to get through the progressions a little bit quicker, but you can see I feel like he can also make up for that a little bit more with just the speed and athleticism that he possesses. And that's just kind of what's been the biggest difference maker for me between the two of those guys is I remember he got out of the pocket and he started moving, and a couple of the referees that were there today just kind of looked at each other like, whoa, like that kid can really move. And just, it feels like that's one of the biggest things we've seen when it comes to Damon is when he gets outside the pocket and he starts moving, people who, whether it be some of the high school coaches that were there last Saturday or just some of the other people that are there for the first time, whether it be fans in stands or whoever else, you kind of hear this, oh, we knew he could move. We didn't know he could move like that. And I think that's one of the most exciting things when it comes to Damon is just that dual threat ability that he brings.
Right. And I think the thing that also is important as a young quarterback, as a freshman quarterback, when he does throw, to your point, off platform outside the pocket, the mechanics don't break down. It doesn't become a wobbly ball, or, he doesn't try and get kind of He doesn't go left or right with it. He still stays who he is, whether he's in the pocket or outside the pocket. And I do notice there is like a slight arm angle change, which again, 2024 in quarterbacks, everybody's got at least 2 or 3 arm slots at this point. It's like a relief pitcher or a starting pitcher having 2 pitches. Like, no, you need 4. Like, you need at least a couple other ones here. Like, to me, there's obviously room for growth for Damon and Demarcy as well. But just the way that he's able to stand with conviction in the pocket. He did kind of have a couple off the back foot throws, but even then, all the balls are still coming out crisp. Like the spirals are tight. To me, it's like that's where I look. If a quarterback is either dragging the foot, then the ball kind of comes out, and you kind of just see it wobble weird. We're not going to name the former Washington quarterbacks who we've seen in the past 2 or 3 years do that, but that's not the case now. Where Damon, it's rifled in. The only thing that I would want from Damon, find the RPM meter and don't always max it out. Again,
but see, that's one of the things with a younger quarterback, where it's just like talking about progressions. It's talking about some of the things that we've seen both of these guys struggle with, where DeMarcius has had trouble with his touch at times, where he's leaving a couple balls short or he'll overshoot. That's okay. These are all things that, if they were 4th, 5th year guys, that's one thing, but they're not. They're 17, 18. They're true freshmen who enrolled early. So it's okay. Yeah, we can see why they might need a little bit more time to hone this in. And that's just something that will come with a little bit more development. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your constant support, as there's so much fun stuff going on right now in terms of spring practice. And we're going to continue bringing just as much coverage as we possibly can of all of that. So please make sure you stay tuned and you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So please make sure to hit that like button on the video, subscribe, click that little bell so you can turn on notifications so you get notified every time we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave us a comment down below. For your audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it really does help the show out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk to you on Monday.